But also, I mean, people like Charlie Kirk, they've been looking for opportunities to make this some sort of like reciprocal George Floyd situation. And that's the part that I think he's almost giving away the game. And it's sad to see a lot of people going along with it.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to yesterday's news channel where we watch CNN so you don't have to. Tonight, unfortunately, we're going to see how the media tried to bury one of the most disturbing stories of the year, and how Scott Jennings is the one cutting through the noise once again. CNN finally covered the brutal murder of a white Ukrainian refugee by a mentally ill black man, and their takeaway question: what does this have to do with race? Thankfully, I've got a clip of Scott Jennings for you, because while CNN spins excuses, Scott Jennings tells the truth. You'll hear it for yourself later in the show. But first, let's look at how Abby Phillip and her panel on Newsnight framed the story. Let's go.
Attack, and one that is random. I think it strikes people in a place of fear because you want to be able to ride the light rail and not get stabbed to death. I think the question here tonight, Brad, is, you know, people are murdered every single day in every city in America, and every single one of those murders is terrible and a tragedy. But this particular one, I'm trying to understand why this has become such a flashpoint on the right.
Well, I think first off, the man who committed this crime was out on cashless bail, which has been a crusade of the political left. He also has a repeat offender, career criminal. 14 times he was arrested. His mother tried to have him involuntarily committed because he's schizophrenic. He attacked his sister just 5 years ago. He clearly is someone who should not have been out on bail in January when he was released on bail. And every one of these murders is a tragedy, but every one of them that's let out because of a soft judge is a tragedy.
But the video...
But certain people have been looking for an opportunity to find a case like this, to make a point like this. I want to play, this is Charlie Kirk, why he says this hasn't gotten a lot of attention.
A white Ukrainian refugee was murdered just because she was white. Everybody knows that, obviously. If a random white person simply walked up to and stabbed a nice, law-abiding black person for no reason, it would be an apocalyptically huge national story used to impose national sweeping political changes on the whole country. Instead, Megan Basham, no one seems to care when a white woman gets stabbed to the death.
Wow. He said white a lot.
Well, but also, I mean, people like Charlie Kirk, they've been looking for opportunities to make this some sort of like reciprocal George Floyd situation. And that's the part that I think he's almost giving away the game. And it's sad to see a lot of people going along with it.
You know, let me just say a couple of things. One is, I mean, what happened to that young woman was horrible. And it's everybody's nightmare. If you're in any public space, a subway, whatever, that something bad is going to happen to you or somebody you care about. So it does strike a chord. We don't know why that man did what he did. And for Charlie Kirk to say, we know he did it because she's white, when there's no evidence of that, it's just pure race mongering, hate mongering, it's wrong. Then he says that if something like that had happened the other way, there would be sweeping changes imposed on society. Where is the George Floyd Policing Act? It didn't pass. Even when you had a white police officer murder a black man on live television, the whole world saw, there were no sweeping changes. In fact, not one law was passed at the federal level. So I think that's an important thing to point out. The other thing is, you mentioned the thing about cashless bail. I think this is a big challenge that we have. Would you have felt better if there had been cash bail and the mom had come and put down $1,000 to let him out? It's not about cashless bail or no cashless bail. It's about the fact that we don't know how to deal with people who are hurting in the way this man was hurting. Hurt people hurt people. What happened was horrible, but it becomes an opportunity for people to jump on bandwagons. And then for someone like Charlie Kirk, he should be ashamed of himself. No one mentioned the word race, white, black, or anything except him. What people mention is the horror of what happened to this young woman.
Van, I'm going to agree with you. I don't care who was white and who was black. And I don't know how Charlie Kirk got into it. I agree with you on that. The reason there were no changes passed in Congress after George Floyd is because the Democrats wouldn't pass Tim Scott's bill. That's the reason. It was Chuck Schumer decided he'd rather have the issue in the election than let Tim Scott get credit for it.
Most murders in the U.S. never become national news. This one's garnered attention for a couple of reasons. Number one, first and foremost, the recent release of that gruesome video. Second, the energy from pro-Trump activists. They picked up on this video from local news and ran with it. It's a little bit like the times when civil rights groups have raised attention about police-involved shootings. In this case, it is Trump-aligned influencers who are posting up a storm about this case on social media. Really, over the weekend, Elon Musk, Charlie Kirk, other Trump-aligned figures succeeded in making this senseless death a symbol of big city crime. We heard President Trump asked about it yesterday when he was heading home from New York City. He didn't seem to know much about it. He said he would get briefed, and then today Trump did know all about it. That's exactly what has happened here. This story has trickled up from local news to social media and now to the president's attention, and it's being used, as you said, Brianna, as a political symbol, with MAGA media calling for more forceful punishments and more incarceration. I have to say, some of the replies to Musk, some of the comments around this story are baldly racist, stoking fear of African Americans because this man attacked a white woman. The open racism on sites like X today, it's eye-popping. But there are also legitimate questions about this so-called career criminal, someone who had been a repeat offender. And those questions, I hope they're not lost amid all of the cesspool kind of comments on social media.
Now, if you're able to suffer through that, you'll be rewarded because I've got Scott as a palate cleanser. But just first, a couple of thoughts. Instead of focusing on crime, CNN goes after anyone who notices the truth. You just notice something. Of course, I'd be an idiot not to admit that people are politicizing this. Unfortunately, everything is these days. But that's not the story. They're not getting the point. When a black victim is killed by a white person, it's a national movement. But when the roles are reversed, suddenly race doesn't matter. And if you dare point it out, you're the racist. But he left out the obvious. There would also be riots. Cities burned for months after George Floyd. And half the people destroying the neighborhoods didn't even know why. They just needed an excuse. And then you got Van Jones' spin. Well, there wasn't sweeping police reform because of George Floyd. Doesn't make it better. So what? People like him held the country hostage over it for years. And while CNN shrugs this off, we've seen people go rush to set up GoFundMes for criminals like this. The system and the culture bend over backwards for the perpetrator while the victim's forgotten. This is what happens when the media empathizes with evil instead of calling it what it is. But now for the good part. Watch how Scott Jennings, unlike CNN, actually covers this honestly on his radio show.
Magistrate judge of some sort let him go, free to roam. There is absolutely a racial component to this story on a couple of fronts. First, the kinds of soft-on-crime policies advocated by the left following the George Floyd riots are absolutely why Brown was not in prison. In the name of racial equity, many cities and states decided that violent, repeat offenders should be released from prison and left to roam freely in our communities. Brown himself is clearly heard on the tape saying, "I got that white girl." You can listen to it for yourself. Sounds like racial animus to me. And second, let me also say that the media narrative here is important. Everyone within the sound of my voice knows that had the roles been reversed and a white male, a violent repeat offender white male, had murdered in cold blood a black or brown female on a train, every national news organization would be broadcasting live from Charlotte 24/7. Every national news organization would be there. There would be public uprisings. There would be speeches about white supremacy. It would all be used as a vehicle for sweeping public policy changes. You know it, and I know it. And every honest person knows why the national media ignored this story and now portrays it in a way that sidesteps the terrible truths that we have learned. And I'll tell you one more thing. The victim here, Irina Zarutska, is simply the wrong kind of immigrant. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, she's white. She's from Ukraine, not Mexico or Central or South America. The national media narrative right now is that a white supremacist administration is brutalizing illegal immigrants simply because they are brown. That's the narrative. You hear it every night. And yet, in this case, a legal immigrant to this country, a white immigrant, was brutalized and murdered by a violent African American male. This does not fit the narrative. And when things don't fit the narrative, they are disappeared from reality by our media. The same goes for the shooting in Minneapolis a couple of weeks ago. That's gone from the news. You'll never hear about it again. Same thing from Nashville a couple of years ago. That came and went like it never happened because the shooters were trans and they shot up Christian schools. Doesn't fit the narrative. Time to disappear. Unless the criminal and the victim fit the preferred cultural narrative, the story is treated as though it did not happen. Or in the case of North Carolina, when ignoring it is no longer an option, the narrative always becomes, isn't it terrible that conservatives noticed something that happened? When a story doesn't fit the narrative, the pivot is, well, Republicans, they did a bad thing here by noticing, don't you know? The radicalism must be preserved at all costs. The soft on crime policies must be preserved. The left, the radical, progressive, Marxist, anti-American left can never, ever, ever be portrayed as being in the wrong. Never. If you want to know why our national media is held in such low esteem, this is it. The sins of omission, the sins of promoting narratives over reality, the sins of distorting the truth.
Well, geez, Scott, what do you want me to do here? That's a tough act to follow. In the interest of just trying to always be as honest as I can, I want to say when Scott said there, one of the racial components was that the attacker said, I got that white girl. It's my understanding, and certainly if you're going to trust one of us, trust Scott, but it's my understanding that was said by one of the bajillion bystanders that did nothing to help the woman. And I don't think Scott was spinning that or anything. I've heard a lot of people saying that that's what the killer said. I don't think it changes the conversation at all. I just wanted to let you know that that's the latest that I know. Because Scott tells the truth. CNN spins and stalls. Instead of calling out evil for what it is, the media tries to make excuses. They talk about guns when it fits, mental illness when it fits, and race when it fits. It's never about principle. It's always about narrative. And if conservatives don't scream about it, the story gets buried. That's why we're all talking about it. This isn't complicated. A violent career criminal brutally murdered an innocent refugee. The system let it happen. The media is trying to hide it. That's the reality. If you're still unsure about it, just go back and watch what Scott said about it. What do you guys think? Is CNN's what does this have to do with race, or, kind of the way they framed that question, genuine? That can't be, right? Or do they know exactly what they're doing? They have to be, right? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Anyway, that's it for this video. Life's precious. Be kind to people. That sounded kind of gay, but you know what? Kindness is good. And always put God first. I'll see you guys.